Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and since this is about the business of music, I just wanted to talk about what my experience has been in the Atlanta area with getting shows as a bass player mostly, but sometimes as a guitar player and singer. So in general, when you're starting out, you're probably going to find things that you might find things that don't even pay at first until you find a band and you're starting to get established. But basically, you can start with restaurant gigs and bar gigs. And if you're an original band, you're not going to get as much if it's a starting out original band in general, unless you have like a really big following because the singer is the most popular person in college or at their school or whatever the case may be. Then sometimes you get to skirt around some of these things. But in general, if you're starting out as an original artist, you're going to make the lower tier because it's not about the money, it's about getting your music out there at first. But as a cover band, you might play restaurants or bars, and that's kind of like level one or level two, I would call those. And then basically, out of those bar gigs, if you do it right and you provide enough value and the audience really likes you, some of the restaurants and bars, you might be able to get some private party gigs out of that. And if you get some private party shows, those typically pay, I would say, 2 to 3 times what the bar shows pay in general. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but in general, it probably pays about 2 to 3 times what a bar pays. Um, that can go up depending on whose party it is. But then after that, you've got corporate bands and wedding bands, and those are kind of like the private party amount, but you might even be able to get 4 or 5 times what a bar gig pays you. So that's just kind of like that next tier. So you're starting out and you're doing original shows, maybe, or you're playing at venues that do original shows. Even if you're playing covers, you're probably not going to make much unless you have a really big draw. Then you've got your bar shows. You're going to make a certain amount. It's a solid amount, but it's not a whole bunch. Then private parties come in probably most of the time just below wedding and corporate gigs. So then if you want to make more money than you're making at wedding or corporate gigs, one thing to do is still within like weddings, you could provide more value. So basically, you could announce the wedding. You could always take request songs, but that's sometimes not enough. If you're a member of the band that sings and plays, you could play the cocktail hour, and you can find different ways within that wedding to get more of the budget that they have kind of associated with your band instead of splitting it off into several groups. So that's a cool thing that I've noticed. Then, if you want to make more money than that, not per night, but ongoing, these traveling shows, like I got to do a touring show, and even though each night it paid more like a bar show, I'd get paid for the nights off too. So, because of the sheer amount of it and the fact that you don't have to book every single day because you're going to somebody else's tour that's already booked, sometimes that can actually turn out better than even the wedding or the corporate gigs um, if you're literally getting paid for every night that you're out. And if the band's doing really well and packing out the venues. So those are just some ideas to think about. And I think that if you want to make more in music than that, you either have to write some songs that do something pretty big, you have to go into the teaching route, which there's so many ways that you can make teaching pay more, but not necessarily more per day. It's just a lot more consistent. So those are kind of my tips for you for now. And then, of course, there's licensing and stuff like that. I'm sure that if you get really, really deep into it, you can make even more with your writing and licensing it to TV, movies, Netflix, all that stuff. But I think that that's kind of the progression of things. You don't have to do one or the other. Like, if you want to be a writer, I would say write the entire time. So if you have to pay the other bills, you could pay the other bills with doing gigs or with doing teaching, but just make sure to leave enough time to write every day and to hone your craft. But back to the sideman part of things, it's playing with people, doing their originals is more rewarding in a personal sense, but less rewarding in a financial sense. So this is just the financial tier. So then you've got your bar gigs, cover gigs, and stuff like that. And then after that, you've got your private parties, and somewhere within the same place between private parties, corporate bands, and weddings, I think you could also mix in tribute bands. So if you're doing like a Guns N' Roses tribute band where you play nothing but their music or something like that, you might actually be able to make more. And some of those guys end up getting a lot of private parties, end up getting a lot of private events that actually end up paying as much as the wedding gigs, if you're lucky. So those are just some ideas to think about. So that's why if you've noticed there are a lot of tribute bands forming that people are doing that, they can charge a pretty good amount, especially if there's not a tribute band in the area that does the same band that they're doing, and there's a need for it, meaning there are a whole bunch of people that really like one band in that area. They will shell out the money to hire somebody. All right, I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, write them in the comments below. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.